Hey folks, tonight we step into the rowdy, smoky, slightly sticky world of the medieval tavern, the unsung heart of every town. The unofficial center of life, where a farmer, a bard, and maybe a thief could all drink, laugh, and get robbed in equal measure. It wasn't just a place to drink. It was where danger, laughter, and disease mingled freely beneath a thatched roof. Before we dive in, take a second to like the video and subscribe. Only if you genuinely enjoy this journey. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see who's joining from across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe switch on a fan for that soft, ambient hum, and let's ease into the scene. You've slogged through muddy streets that smell of horses, smoke, and questionable soup. It's just stopped raining, leaving everything slick, including your shoes. You're tired, hungry, and narrowly avoided being run over by a cart full of turnips twice. What you need now is a drink. So how do you find a tavern in a medieval town? There are no glowing signs, no Yelp reviews, no GPS. You follow the noise. Somewhere past the blacksmith's hammering and the fishmonger's cries about his fresh river eels, you hear laughter, shouting, and someone aggressively singing about a goose. And there it is, a crooked wooden building, leaning slightly as if the architecture itself had had one too many. Above the door hangs a crude sign, barely legible, perhaps a barrel, perhaps a bear, perhaps both. Either way, this is your destination. The front step is slick with ale. You push open the heavy iron-hinged door. It creaks like it's auditioning for its own role in the evening's entertainment. Warm air hits you first, rich with the scent of smoke, wet wool, stale beer, and mystery meat. A drunken handshake from the tavern itself. Inside, the ceiling is low, forcing tall men to duck and drunk men to bump their heads. The floor is literal dirt, covered in straw in a vain attempt at cleanliness. There are no private booths, no waiters with menus, and quiet conversation is a myth. This is a medieval tavern, loud, chaotic, and full of life. You spot an open seat at a lopsided bench near the hearth, damp from something. Nearby, two patrons argue about a stolen chicken. A man lies passed out with a ladle still in hand, and a one-eyed dog gnaws on a bone as if it's the landlord. You've barely arrived, and already you smell like a night to remember. The heavy tavern door slams behind you, sealing in darkness that wraps around your senses like a damp wool blanket, warm, comfortable, and slightly suspicious. Candlelight flickers across soot-stained walls, casting shadows that make even the furniture look like it might pick a fight. The hearth blazes in the far corner, both heating the room and providing a constant open flame hazard. Smoke drifts lazily through a chimney that might be stuffed with a dead crow. But the smell hits you hardest. Top notes of warm, sour ale, undertones of sweat, years of human and horse interaction, maybe even a touch of myth, hints of moldy bread, wet straw, and boiled onions. No perfumer has dared bottle this scent. Tables are carved with initials, crude drawings, and knife scars, wobbling with stubborn pride. Benches creak under muddy boots, thick cloaks, and questionable decisions. The floor, layered with straw, attempts to soak up spills, spit, and the occasional unconscious customer. Step wrong, and your foot sinks into something best left undescribed. The crowd is alive, a breathing, shouting organism. Laughter erupts in one corner, while a pig's price sparks a heated debate in another. A woman slams her mug down hard enough to spill half her drink. No one flinches. A man at the next table stares at you with the dazed expression of someone either thinking too deeply or forgetting how chairs work. Despite the sensory assault, there's something welcoming here. The tavern is alive, rough, raw, unfiltered. A medieval community hub, minus hygiene, and with about 400% more shouting. You find your seat. Damp, maybe cursed, but yours for now. The layout seems like someone arranged furniture during an earthquake and left it that way. Tables and benches at random, crates masquerading as chairs. Everything is either too close or too far, depending on how drunk you are. The hearth remains the centerpiece, roaring against one wall, offering warmth, light, and indoor smoke inhalation. Around it, People crowd like moths to a flame, mugs in hand, voices raised, reveling in the chaotic symphony of a medieval night. The warmth of the hearth clung to those with the best seats, the kind of heat that makes your shoulders loosen and your spirits rise. Those without, well, that's what ale was for. Thick, sour, and poured from mugs that had been passed through more hands than anyone could count. The drink offered a temporary escape from the chill and chaos. The bar, if you could call it that, was little more than a thick wooden plank stretched across two barrels, sagging under the weight of mugs, jugs, and elbows. Behind it, the tavern keeper moved like a conductor of an unruly orchestra, pouring drinks, shouting orders, glaring at the one man who hadn't paid since last Tuesday, and occasionally wiping up something suspicious from the floor. Their eyes were sharp, memorizing everything. The look of someone too drunk, too bold, too foolish. There were no menus. You asked what was available and braced yourself. The answer usually involved ale, and occasionally silence. Upstairs, a narrow, splintering staircase led to the rooms above. A boot dangled from one of the railing posts, hanging at an angle that suggested either art or warning. No one could say for sure. Some taverns had a back room. Sometimes it was storage, sometimes illegal gambling, sometimes the place where the last person foolish enough to insult the barmaid had disappeared. Questions about it were always met with a glance sharp enough to draw blood. The walls were blackened with soot from centuries of candles, the windows covered with greasy cloth or animal hide. Every surface, tables, benches, even door frames, had been polished by decades of elbows, boots, spilt drinks, and occasional scraps of food, sometimes a chicken, wandering or purposefully released. And yet, despite, or perhaps because of, the chaos, the tavern worked. Everyone knew where to go, when to sit, when to shout, and when to duck. It was alive, a chaotic, breathing organism. And in every tavern, without fail, there was a ruler. It was not the local lord, not the tax collector, not the wandering knight with his sword freshly oiled. It was the tavern keeper. The tavern keeper wore no crown, yet commanded absolute respect. They were chef, server, accountant, babysitter, and enforcer rolled into one. They were the eye in the storm of ale, mud, and human chaos. If the keeper was a man, he was likely barrel-shaped, grizzled, and carved from years of labor and bad decisions. If a woman, and often it was, she was sharper than a blacksmith's file, capable of silencing a room with a single glance. They had seen everything: brawls, bar fights, stolen purses, children running wild, drunken serenades that devolved into insults and chaos. They had clean blood from straw before breakfast and still managed to pour a perfect pint for a regular patron. They greeted familiar faces with nods, strangers with suspicion, and troublemakers with a tankard to the head, should one be needed. Mental bookkeeping was their secret. They remembered every debt, every insult, every slight. Literacy was optional, memory was everything. Who owed what, who was cheating whom, who had slept with whom, and who had just arrived under a false name. They knew it all. Bribes, favors, protection, information. If you wanted it, the tavern keeper was your first and last call. But cross them, break a mug, or forget a debt, and there were consequences. Always consequences. Many tavern keepers had helpers, sons, daughters, spouses, apprentices, orphans taken in and trained in the ways of the alehouse. These assistants carried barrels heavier than themselves, ran drinks through the maze of tables, mopped the floors, and learned to avoid being trampled or insulted. Without them, the chaos would collapse into anarchy. And yet, the system worked. It had to. Each tavern was a delicate ecosystem. The regulars, the drunks, the occasional thief or bard, the lost traveler, they all had their place, their rhythm. And at the center, like a storm god in an apron, stood the tavern keeper, commanding the chaos, ensuring the ale kept flowing, the fires stayed lit, and the roof didn't cave in during the inevitable brawl. The patrons were a diverse lot. Farmers with rough hands and sharper tongues. Minstrels, whose songs and stories might entertain or enrage in equal measure. merchants with purses too full and patience too thin, soldiers, just back from campaigns, looking to forget blood and death in a mug of ale, and beggars, pickpockets, and vagabonds, all trying to make a living or a laugh off the chaos. The tavern was alive. Laughter and shouting collided with the smells of smoke, sweat, stale beer, and boiled onions. Music, live or improvised, filled the air, weaving with arguments, sneezes, and the occasional yelp of a dog or insulted chicken. Every creak of a bench, every crash of mug on table, every scuffle near the hearth added to the symphony. Seats were claimed as a matter of survival. The best were closest to the fire, where warmth radiated and ale remained drinkable. The less fortunate took whatever space they could find, bracing against drafty corners, wet floors, and occasional elbow in the ribs. Drink helped, yes, but so did luck and nerves of steel. And above it all, commanding, judging, protecting, and sometimes punishing, the tavern keeper watched. Their voice, sharp and commanding, could calm a riot or ignite one. Their glance could inspire awe, fear, or immediate compliance. They knew every eye in the room, every coin owed, every secret whispered behind cupped hands. To cross them was folly, to aid them was survival. In the medieval tavern, everything had a rhythm. The clatter of mugs, the stomp of boots, the shouts of argument, the bursts of laughter, they all belonged. And in that rhythm, you learned your place. The tavern was more than a building. It was a living organism, chaotic but balanced, wild but ordered. And at its center, like the beating heart of this mad, smoky creature, was the one person who kept it all alive. Without the tavern keeper, the ale would spill, the fires would die, and the chaos would consume everything. With them, the tavern was alive, dangerous, intoxicating, and unforgettable. Every corner held a story, every bench a secret, every mug a tiny explosion of history, sweat, and ale. You could sit quietly, observe, and learn everything, or stumble, shout, or steal, and find yourself part of the story. The medieval tavern was not just a place to drink. It was a world, a theater, a battlefield, and a sanctuary all at once. And in that world, for those who could survive its chaos, there was no better seat than the one near the hearth, with a mug in hand, under the watchful eye of the keeper. The tavern keeper, the figure at the heart of every medieval tavern, commanding respect with a glance, an elbow, or the well-aimed heft of a tankard. You finally settle onto a creaky bench, dodging elbows, spilled stew, and the occasional clawing cat. Your boots are slick with mud, your throat parched, your stomach a growling complaint. And now comes the main event, the drink. But forget wine lists, fancy glasses, or ice-cooled perfection. This is a medieval tavern. Choices are limited, lukewarm, potent, and sometimes life-threatening. First, the ale. Unfiltered, unpasteurized, brewed somewhere in the back where the tavern dog sleeps and dreams of chasing pigs. It's thick, cloudy, flecked with floating grains, yeast, and possibly the remnants of a long-forgotten mustache. You lift the mug, sniff the mixture cautiously, and sip. Warm, bitter, slightly tangy, and somehow perfect. In this place, if it's wet and doesn't immediately poison you, it's a fine vintage. Next, mead. Sweet, potent, occasionally explosive. If the tavern keeper made it themselves, it might be a delight. Or it might taste like regret mixed with honey and vinegar. Served to nobles, brash bards, or wedding guests who paid enough to keep the roof over their heads. Mead is always a gamble. And cider, sharp, tangy, sometimes fermented beyond reason, served in cracked mugs that might double as bowls by morning. It's the drink of orchards, of those who want to forget the farmer sitting too close to them, and those who value a stiff drink over subtlety. Wine, rare, precious, often watered down, and saved for lords, bishops, or the local merchant who just sold 12 crates of salt and water. Most drinks here exist for survival, not enjoyment. Clean wells are rare. Boiling water is a luxury. Children drink ale because it's safer than untreated water. Wooden, clay, or tin mugs are passed along from hand to hand. often smeared with yesterday's grime. You raise your mug, sip cautiously, and survive. Barely. Now comes food. Forget menus. Forget polite questions about allergies or dietary preferences. Here, you ask what's left and hope it's edible. The star of the tavern table is usually pottage, a thick stew of grains, vegetables, and questionable meats, rabbit, pigeon, chicken, or whatever wandered too close to the fire. It simmers in the same pot for days, new ingredients added, old ones never removed. It's less food and more a historical artifact, a culinary time capsule of desperation and necessity. Your bowl is wood or clay. Your spoon, if you have one, or your fingers. Bread is tough and dense, perfect for beating the unwary or used as a ladle for the stew. Cheese smells like boots and has grown its own character. Salted fish, pickled eggs, or specials are served occasionally, meaning leftovers rearranged with optimism. You eat, quietly, hoping not to topple your bowl or spill your mug. The real entertainment begins when you notice the people. The tavern is a living organism, a chaotic, breathing network of stories, rumors, and performances. To your left, a red-faced farmer slaps your shoulder mid-sentence, laughing, shouting the same tale about his cow giving birth sideways for the 4th time tonight. At the far end, a hooded stranger nurses a drink slowly, eyes darting, calculating. Is he a runaway monk, a bandit, or just bad at eye contact? Either way, making conversation might be unwise. A soldier in battered armor recounts a battle involving dragons, Frenchmen, and a talking sword. The audience laughs, cries, drinks, and occasionally throws food. Merchants shout prices for grain no one needs. Dice are rolled on warped tables, cheaters grin knowingly, and bards strum their cracked instruments, voices straining to hit the notes they never practiced. Women weave through the chaos with grace, sharp eyes, and fists capable of teaching anyone a lesson. Children dart through legs, snatching coins or bread, unbothered by the adults' shouts. Every sound, every movement, every spill, every shout contributes to the symphony of chaos. Mugs clink, benches creak, feet stomp in rhythm with drunken songs. The smell of smoke, sweat, stale ale, boiled onions, and roasted meat overwhelms you. You taste it in the air before the ale touches your lips. The tavern is alive, raw, and dangerous. And at the center of it all, the tavern keeper reigns. The tavern keeper is a conductor, judge, and general of this small, chaotic society. If they're in a good mood, laughter blooms, arguments dissolve, and mugs flow freely. In a bad mood, you drink fast, speak soft, and pray for mercy. They know every debt, every secret, every grudge, and remember it all without writing a single note. One glance from them can end a brawl or ignite one. One gesture, and the room obeys. Helpers bustle around them. Children, spouses, apprentices, or adopted orphans who carry barrels, mop floors, and serve drinks with precision under pressure. They navigate the room's chaos like dancers, knowing instinctively where to step and when to duck. Every spilled drink, every barked insult, every thump of booted feet is absorbed, managed, and sometimes used to their advantage. The tavern is more than a building. It's an ecosystem. Patrons, staff, animals, and the occasional stray chicken are all part of the rhythm. Every corner has its story. Every table is a stage. Every mug, bowl, and chair contributes to a centuries-old symphony of human chaos. The tavern keeper, vigilant and enduring, ensures the performance continues. Brawls erupt with alarming frequency. A miscounted coin, a drunken insult, or a child swiping bread can ignite a melee. Yet, managed correctly, the chaos is mesmerizing. Patrons stagger and argue, wrestle and laugh, drink and shout. Every altercation is an intricate dance, choreographed by the unspoken rules of survival and the watchful eye of the keeper. Stories circulate as quickly as the ale. Tales of far-off lands, heroic deeds, misfortune, theft, and intrigue are exchanged. Everyone has a story, everyone listens, and everyone contributes, whether knowingly or not. The tavern is a living library of experience, raw and unfiltered. As the night deepens, the fire glows, shadows dance, and laughter peaks. Mugs are raised, songs are sung, some entirely improvised, and secrets whispered into the dark corners. You lean back, soaking it all in: the chaos, the warmth, the music, the smells, the wild, imperfect life of the tavern. For a moment, you understand why people return night after night, year after year. It is dangerous, unpredictable, maddening, but utterly alive. Some clang cheerfully, others shatter completely, sending shards of wood and tin clattering across the floor. Both are met with roars of approval, laughter bouncing off soot-stained walls and low timber beams. That laughter, big, booming, rich enough to make a boar pause mid-grunt, dominates everything. A farmer chuckles at his own joke about a cow giving birth sideways. A miller giggles uncontrollably at the mere mention of pottage. A monk wheezes whenever someone shouts "duck." You quickly learn, don't ask why. Voices layer over one another, each one trying to assert dominance like roosters in a coop. They argue about taxes, misquote scripture to win bets, retell the same stories with subtle exaggerations, and yell at anyone who dares contradict them. Over all this, the tavern keeper shouts orders, swats flies, and occasionally lands a sharp glance on someone who's been too loud or too slow paying. Barmaids yell, pushing and shoving patrons away from stolen mugs or wandering hands. And yet, someone keeps crying, "Another round," as if declaring war on sobriety itself. In a corner, the bard plucks a half-tuned lute, 3 strings missing entirely. He loops the same 4 chords endlessly, occasionally bursting into impromptu verses about lost love, runaway chickens, or a nobleman who wore his pants backwards. No one pays attention until he sings about someone in the room, at which point chaos intensifies. Cheers, jeers, and applause erupt in equal measure. Someone spills ale, someone else falls off a bench while still debating the superiority of boiled onions over cabbage. Dogs bark, a goat bleats inexplicably, and chairs scrape across the dirt floor like rolling thunder. It is not quiet. It is not peaceful. But in the disorder, there is rhythm, the tavern's heartbeat, raw and relentless. Occasionally, the room falls silent. Precisely 3 seconds. Then someone farts with heroic precision, laughter ricocheting from every corner, and the cacophony resumes. If you listen closely, the tavern's chaos forms an odd harmony, born not of skill, but of survival and repetition. And like every heartbeat, the longer you remain, the more attuned you become to it. Once the ale flows freely and the stew settles in your belly, the tavern transforms. No longer just a place to drink and eat, it becomes a medieval casino, minus velvet ropes, but with 4 times the yelling. Gambling is everywhere. Weathered soldiers roll dice against barefoot boys, merchants bet coin against chickens, and bards wager their instruments. There is no pit boss, no dealer, no rules besides the unspoken ones. Dice, carved from bone, wood, or scavenged remnants, clatter across tables, thunder echoing in the rafters. Every throw is met with cheers, groans, or accusations of witchcraft. Cards appear in some corners, hand-painted, thick, worn to the edges, always missing 1 or 2. Rules shift depending on who explains them, often rewritten mid-game. Betting ranges wildly: copper coins, mugs, livestock, even temporary freedom. Someone once wagered a goat and lost. Another bet his boots. Cheating is expected, encouraged even. Hidden dice, marked cards, subtle gestures, coughs and glances, all part of the game. Win, and you buy rounds. Lose, and you smile through humiliation, slowly inching toward the door. Side games abound. Arm wrestling, thumb wars, drinking contests where the winner earns applause and the loser a night under the table with a pounding headache. Stakes are absurd, rules often improvised, yet the energy is intoxicating. In the medieval tavern, luck is not a game. It's survival. Your purse, pride, and sometimes even your clothing hang in the balance. As the evening deepens, the room grows humid with body heat, smoke, and ale. A new performance takes hold. Words, music, confident nonsense. Stories emerge from every corner. A bard clears his throat, plucks at his half-tuned lute, and begins a tale. The strings squeak, sound resembling old boots dragged across stone, but the audience does not mind. The stories are the lifeblood. Farmers, soldiers, merchants, monks, and wanderers offer their personal epics, true or fabricated. Every exaggeration is celebrated, every misquote admired, every accidental insult results in laughter, and sometimes a duel of fists or wits. Nearby, a merchant shakes coins, narrating how he cheated a rival out of a shipment of salt using nothing but charm and poor handwriting. Children dart through legs, swiping bread or coins with impressive dexterity, and no one stops them. The tavern operates as a delicate ecosystem. Every spill, shout, cheer, and stolen bite contributes to its rhythm. It's chaos, yes, but a chaos managed with uncanny instinct. The tavern keeper watches, ever vigilant. This person is the hub, the law, the referee, the enforcer. If they are in a good mood, arguments dissolve, games proceed smoothly, and the ale flows freely. If they are in a bad mood, you drink fast, speak softly, and pray you haven't committed an unnoticed transgression. Their assistants, children, spouses, apprentices, hustle tirelessly, carrying mugs, mopping floors, dodging flying elbows. The tavern may look like anarchy, but it is a symphony directed by the keenest mind in the room. Fights erupt with alarming frequency. A miscounted coin, a careless insult, or a dispute over dice often leads to chaos. Chairs topple, tankards fly, and fists swing. Yet, managed correctly, the chaos becomes entertainment. Patrons stagger, laugh, cry, and shout in a living rhythm, every misstep absorbed into the tavern's heartbeat. The smells are overwhelming. Smoke, sweat, stale ale, boiled onions, roasted meat, and occasionally something unidentifiable. You taste it in the air before your lips meet the mug. The heat from the hearth wraps around you, tinged with smoke and the faint smell of burned hair from past misadventures. The floor, layered with dirt and straw, squishes beneath your boots, soaked in ale and history. Every step is a risk, every breath a sensory bombardment. Songs burst forth intermittently. Bards, drunk or desperate, pluck at strings, chant verses, or sing entire epics of love, war, and lost chickens. Sometimes their music is melodic, sometimes grating, but always accompanied by laughter, jeers, and applause. Even children hum along, picking up fragments of tunes from the chaos. The tavern transforms again as the night deepens. Patrons argue, wrestle, gamble, and drink. Dishes clang, chairs scrape, mugs slosh. Stories overlap, interrupted by burps, sneezes, and the occasional goat bleeding. A fight breaks out. A barmaid disperses it with a well-placed slap and a glare that freezes all but the boldest. The tavern keeper surveys it all, every step, every whisper, every glance accounted for. The room functions as one organism, with patrons, staff, animals, and stray furniture as its organs. By midnight, the tavern reaches peak chaos. Dice roll, bards sing, children steal, fights erupt, and laughter never dies. You sit, sipping ale that's warm, bitter, and perfect, your stomach full of stew and bread that could double as a weapon. Around you, life unfolds in all its messy glory, a living, breathing, shouting, singing, cheating, falling, rising, laughing organism. And you, newcomer or veteran, are part of it. The tavern is not merely a building. It is a stage, a theater of life, a chaotic symphony orchestrated by instinct, experience, and the one person who keeps it all alive, the tavern keeper. The bard sits crookedly on a bench, missing a few teeth, but not a shred of confidence. With a dramatic flourish, he launches into a ballad of heartbreak and heroism, a tale about a knight who fell for a mermaid and drowned nobly while reciting poetry. Truth matters little here. The story might be entirely fabricated, but everyone listens anyway. Entertainment reigns supreme in the tavern. Truth is optional, applause mandatory. Ale-fueled patrons take turns contributing. One man swears he once wrestled a bear and lived to tell the tale. Another claims he witnessed a witch turn a cow into a goat. A third insists he is related to Charlemagne on his mother's cousin's side. Every story begins with, "You won't believe this," and everyone knows it's probably false, but they want to believe it anyway. Boasts become ballads. Mishaps turn into myths. A joke so terrible circles back to hilarity. A plagiarized poem from a monk's scroll is recited with flair, and the room responds in hoots, claps, or the occasional flying bread, depending on quality. Occasionally, a professional minstrel passes through. Polished, practiced, dangerous in their ability to rile a crowd, they know the golden rule of the tavern: never let facts spoil a good story. Even the finest singers, accustomed to courts and guilds, understand that here, smoke, firelight, and sloshing mugs are the stages upon which legends are born. Storytelling isn't just entertainment. It's tradition. It's how you make allies, enemies, and lifelong drinking partners. By midnight, half the tavern is reenacting the tale of a one-legged knight who fought off 6 highwaymen using a ladle. Laughter, cheering, and disbelief mingle in the air. In the tavern, every liar is a legend, and every legend has a following. Flirting enters naturally, like another layer of performance. Ale loosens tongues and lowers inhibitions. Eyes lock across tables, one squinting through the haze of meat, smoke, and laughter. A man with only 2 teeth leans forward. "Milady, your beauty burns brighter than the half-moon tonight." She responds with a bread crust to the forehead. The room erupts in cheers. Others offer mugs, awkward compliments, or try to help carry a bowl of pottage, which inevitably spills. For women, whether staff, merchant, or traveler, navigating the tavern requires skill and vigilance. Poets attempt impressing tricks like balancing knives on noses. Occasionally, it succeeds. More often, it ends with a black eye or an empty purse. Courtesans work subtly, reading the room. Who has coin? Who is charming? Who will pass out before reaching the stairs? Their trades are discreet, but rumors ignite jealousy and occasionally violence. A wandering glance or a misinterpreted gesture can ignite a fight faster than spilled ale. Brawls erupt with alarming frequency. Accusations, insults, or stolen glances can send mugs flying and benches toppling. Patrons leap over tables, brandishing tankards like weapons. Yet these fights are rarely deadly. They are chaotic performances, entertaining to onlookers and cathartic for participants. Fists swing wildly, hair is pulled, beards yanked, and the tavern keeper, armed with a ladle and a club, roars like a battlefield general, orchestrating chaos into order. Occasionally, bystanders join impulsively, placing bets or cheering from the sidelines, knowing that restraint is often less entertaining than action. Eventually, the chaos wanes. One patron lies on the floor, nursing bruises. Another stumbles into a wall and sits to rethink their life. Mugs are refilled, songs resume, and laughter fills the tavern once more. No grudges linger. Bruises fade into stories, and nicknames are earned. One-Eyed Arnold, Benchbreaker Bill, each a badge of survival in the night's theater. Even the brawlers find their place in the narrative, part of the tavern's living legend. Food and drink sustain the chaos. Stew, thick and mysterious, bubbles in a large pot. Its contents a shifting collection of vegetables, grains, and proteins whose origins are debated but rarely questioned. Bread is tough and dark, suitable for use as both sustenance and blunt weapon. Ale is unfiltered, cloudy, and warm, its surface a floating menagerie of yeast, grains, and possibly remnants from previous patrons. Mead and cider offer sweetness and strength, though both can surprise with explosive potency. Wine exists only in distant regions or for the privileged few. Children drink ale not for pleasure but survival. The alcohol helps prevent dysentery. The tavern's atmosphere is a symphony of disorder. Dogs bark, goats bleat, chairs scrape, and laughter erupts unpredictably. Fires crackle in the hearth, throwing dancing shadows across soot-stained walls. Smoke rises in lazy columns, sometimes catching in the hair of the patrons or tangling with the aroma of pottage and roasting meat. Each breath is a mixture of warmth, heat, and centuries of accumulated scent, carrying stories as much as odors. Sleeping arrangements are similarly rustic. Those seeking lodging climb creaky stairs to rooms past low beams and uneven floors. Privacy is non-existent. Straw-stuffed mattresses are thin, lumpy, and host to the tavern's many companions: mites, insects, and lingering scents of previous guests. Boots remain on, weapons are tucked nearby, and blankets are shared. Snoring patrons compete for auditory dominance, their dreams spilling into the night in languages foreign or forgotten. Even in this cramped, uncomfortable space, the tavern continues to function as a social hub. Patrons form alliances, rivalries, romances, and grudges in the night. Bonds are forged in shared chaos, laughter, and misadventure. The tavern keeper ensures survival, arbitrates disputes, and maintains the delicate ecosystem. In their hands, the tavern remains alive, chaotic, and somehow ordered. Every detail, from the floating crumbs of yesterday's bread to the polished barrel corners, is testimony to the continuity of life here. Patrons may come and go, stories are repeated, embellished, and sometimes forgotten, but the tavern endures. It is not a building. It is a living organism, breathing, pulsing, and thriving on chaos, laughter, brawls, ale, and song. As the night wanes, stories meld into legends. The bard, half-conscious atop a bench, dreams of mermaids and knights. Patrons snore, murmur, or plot their next gambit. The tavern, full of bruises, spilled ale, and fractured benches, remains upright, held together by history, habit, and the unseen will of the tavern keeper. In the medieval tavern, every night is epic, messy, ridiculous, and unforgettable. Even if someone had eaten garlic earlier, it would linger in the air like a tiny curse, finding its way into your dreams, becoming an intimate part of the night. The smell would curl around your senses long after it left your nose. If you were too poor, too drunk, or simply unlucky, you'd sleep on a bench, beneath a table, or tucked into a corner by the hearth, curled beside a dog that may or may not belong to the tavern. Expect nothing more than warmth and occasional bites of fur. You'd be stepped on, sneezed upon, possibly used as a footrest, but somehow, it was safe enough. The tavern never truly slept. Even after the last mug was drained and the brawl patched up, whispers persisted. Someone muttered in their sleep, a log popped in the fire, or a distant fart echoed through the rafters. And yet, amid the chaos, the human mind adapts. Slowly, the noise became its own lullaby, a rhythm of life in which you found comfort. You would wake with a sore neck, a parched throat, a questionable bruise, and the faint sense of having survived a night that was both ordinary and extraordinary. No kings, no silent courtyards, just snoring, straw, and the faint hope that your boots had not been claimed by someone else. Dawn arrived like an uninvited guest, pale and insistent, sliding through the cracks in the shutters, poking at your eyelids. The tavern was changed, quieter but not peaceful. Someone's boot rested on your chest. Another patron mumbled about sheep taxes, as though the world outside hadn't yet begun. The bard, perpetually clutching his lute, snored beneath the table, dreaming of mermaids and knights who drowned nobly. A chicken hopped across the floor, pecking at yesterday's bread crusts with total disregard for decorum. No one questioned it. The fire had burned low overnight, leaving the tavern cold, smoky, and fragrant with pottage that had thickened into a near-solid mass. Patrons stirred like wounded soldiers from a battle fought entirely in dreams. One man sat up, looked around, and flopped back down, concluding that today wasn't worth the effort. The tavern keeper, of course, was already awake, clattering mugs, sweeping straw into neat piles, reheating a pot that smelled at once inviting and vaguely vengeful. A ladle clanged against a mug, a bell of authority, signaling all to rise or move aside. There was no breakfast buffet. If you were lucky, there was more pottage, thicker than last night, and bread still warm from the fire. Ale, watered down but still potent, waited in wooden mugs, carrying the scent of yesterday's indulgences. Some patrons, desperate for cleanliness, dunked their heads in barrels of rainwater outside, calling it virtuous living. Coins in your pouch? Check. Boots still there? Mostly. One had a bite mark, but at least it was yours. Victory, however small, was worth noting. Early risers trickled in, travelers, farmhands, and workers needing a morning drink before facing livestock taxes, troublesome neighbors, or the start of another day's labor. The tavern began to stir like a great beast, its limbs stretching from a long night's slumber. Someone recounted the chaos of last night. 2 brawls, a bard whose song summoned what one swore was a ghost, a flying bench, and everyone nodded, accepting the tales as gospel. The night's chaos was behind them. The morning brought grimy reality. Yet in surviving it, patrons felt alive. They had endured the sweat, the smoke, the spilt ale, the brawls, the flirting, and the near disasters. They had been present in the madness and emerged, messy but intact. The tavern was more than a drinking hole. It was the beating heart of the community. In a world without newspapers, social networks, or instant communication, it was where news traveled, gossip circulated, and alliances formed. Merchants from distant coasts brought stories of foreign ports. Soldiers shared accounts from battlefields. Bards sang songs that stitched people together, changing lyrics nightly but binding listeners nonetheless. Here, farmers drank beside craftsmen. Pilgrims shared bread with thieves. Strangers became friends, or at least temporary drinking partners. Social classes blurred, rumors spread, and grudges were either fueled or forgotten depending on the roll of the dice. The tavern was also a place of business. Deals were made, contracts forged over splintered tables and spilt cider. Jobs were found, purses lost, marriages arranged, and feuds sparked, all within a single evening. It offered relief from the hardships of medieval life, the cold, the labor, the ever-present threat of disease or violence. Within these walls, for a few hours, survival mattered less than laughter, song, and companionship. Even warm ale, itchy beds, and mysterious pottage were preferable to the relentless seriousness of the outside world. When one stepped into a tavern, one bought more than ale and food. They purchased belonging, a story, and perhaps a place to sleep while the fire still burned. Before coffee houses and cafes, there were these taverns, loud, dirty, chaotic, honest, and utterly unforgettable. And somewhere, far from these streets of mud and chaos, history turned its attention elsewhere. Nefertiti, who would one day become the most iconic face of ancient Egypt, remained shrouded in mystery. Her name, the beautiful one has come, carried weight and wonder, though no one truly knew her origin. Perhaps she was the daughter of a powerful official, perhaps even the sister of Pharaoh Akhenaten. For now, she existed elsewhere, a reminder that history was alive beyond the tavern walls. Back in the tavern, life continued in its messy, glorious way. Patrons murmured, laughed, argued, and flirted. Dice rolled across scarred tables, copper coins exchanged hands, and brawls erupted with predictable chaos. Dogs and chickens roamed freely. Food was consumed quickly, often without questioning its origin. Ale flowed, thick and uncertain, carrying the warmth of fellowship. Even the poorest could find a place beside the hearth, protected under the watchful eye of the tavern keeper. Sleep was irregular, often disturbed, always communal. A foot in the ribs here, a sneeze there. Yet the fire's warmth, the noise, and the living pulse of the tavern offered enough comfort to close one's eyes. Patrons dreamed of far-off lands, heroic deeds, lost loves, and fantastical creatures, their dreams intertwined in the shared tapestry of human experience. By dawn, when sunlight pierced the shutters, the tavern became a different creature, quiet, smoldering, recovering. The fire smoldered low, embers still glowing like distant stars. Bread hardened, pottage thickened further, and ale sat waiting. Patrons stirred with groans, stretching muscles stiff from rough benches or straw beds. Boots were checked, belongings accounted for, and small victories celebrated silently. The tavern's essence, however, persisted. It was the same heart of community it had always been, a center of connection, of shared stories, of celebration and commiseration. Here, one could find relief, warmth, companionship, and laughter in the midst of a harsh world. No luxury, no comfort, no polish, just life in its rawest, richest, most unfiltered form. Through chaos, brawls, and ale-soaked tables, a sense of belonging endured. Patrons remembered the night not for discomfort or spilled stew, but for survival, for shared joy, for laughter, and for the stories that would carry them forward. In a medieval tavern, life was messy, unpredictable, and fleeting, but it was undeniably alive. Every detail mattered, from the lingering smell of garlic to the warmth of the hearth, from a chicken's casual wanderings to the tales of a one-legged knight. The tavern held the community together. It preserved memory in song, in story, and in shared laughter. It was a place where every bruised arm, every spilled drink, and every shouted insult contributed to the rhythm of life. Here, in this messy crucible, one learned what it meant to survive, to connect, and to live. The medieval tavern was more than a physical space. It was a repository of memory, culture, and human spirit. Its chaos was its charm, its disorder a form of order, and its patrons, however flawed or drunken, its beating heart. And so, long after the last mug is drained, the last fight forgotten, and the last story told, the tavern endures. Loud, alive, messy, unforgettable, a testament to the endurance of human connection in a world that was often harsh, cold, and merciless. The medieval tavern was not just a place to eat, drink, or sleep. It was a theater, a confessional, a courtroom, a marketplace, a social network, a sanctuary, and a home. For a few hours each night, it offered something rarer than gold: community. Nefertiti. The name alone evokes images of beauty, power, and enigma. But to truly understand her, to capture her essence, you must first step back and see the world she entered, a world of rigid traditions, powerful priests, and a pantheon of gods that had ruled Egypt for centuries. There are debates even today about her origins. Some argue she was a foreign princess sent to Egypt as part of a political alliance, a bride of diplomacy and duty. Others insist she was Egyptian, born of noble blood, possibly the daughter of a high-ranking official, or perhaps even a sister to Akhenaten himself. Whatever the truth, what is undeniable is that when she arrived in the historical record, it was like lightning striking, sudden, brilliant, transformative. She did not enter Akhenaten's life as a mere consort. She entered as a force, an equal partner, a presence that demanded recognition and respect. Together, they would undertake a revolution that shook the very foundations of Egyptian religion and culture. Where centuries of tradition had dictated reverence for a multitude of gods, Nefertiti and Akhenaten proclaimed the supremacy of one, the sun disk, Aten. This monotheistic turn was radical enough to be considered heretical by the entrenched priesthood. The temples of Ammonius and other gods were left in ruins. Statues were smashed, cities abandoned. The old gods had no place in this new vision, and yet, through it all, Nefertiti was not merely a spectator. She was a participant, an instigator, a symbol of the revolution itself. In art, she appears repeatedly, more frequently than Akhenaten himself. In these depictions, she is not draped in the subservience expected of queens. She stands tall, commanding. At times, her figure even dwarfs her husband's, her hands holding ceremonial instruments, her gaze fixed forward. She is at once divine and tangible, bridging the mortal and the sacred. In a society where pharaohs were considered gods, her proximity to Akhenaten suggests she was more than queen. Perhaps she was co-ruler. Perhaps she embodied power in ways that transcended traditional hierarchy. Yet, the rise of Nefertiti was not without opposition. The old priesthood bristled at the dismantling of temples and the erasure of their gods. Egypt was not ready for such upheaval, and resistance simmered beneath the surface. The capital was moved to a new city, Akhetaten, what we now call Amarna, a city built to honor the sun, cut off from the old religious centers. Here, Nefertiti's image was carved into stone walls, her name sung in hymns to the Aten. She became an inseparable part of the new order, present in ceremonies, offerings, and, in some depictions, smiting enemies, a role traditionally reserved for pharaohs. Her influence extended beyond the ceremonial and into the domestic. In reliefs of the period, Nefertiti is often shown with her daughters, heads tilted toward the radiant sun, engaged in moments of intimacy and affection rarely seen in Egyptian art. These portrayals were radical. They shifted the artistic narrative from stiff formality to life and motion, sometimes exaggerated, sometimes tender. The royal family is depicted not only as rulers but as parents, playing with their children, engaging in prayers beneath the golden rays of Aten. Some historians believe Nefertiti's role was more than symbolic. She may have acted as co-regent, assuming authority in Akhenaten's absence or during periods of his ill health. Inscriptions refer to her as Neferneferutin, a name some scholars suggest indicates she may have ruled in her own right, potentially even after Akhenaten's death. Her authority in governance, her visibility in religious ceremonies, and her portrayal in art all hint at a power that extended beyond traditional queenship. Nefertiti's iconography reflects both nurturing and formidable aspects. She is shown cradling her children, emphasizing maternal care, yet simultaneously, she dons the blue crown of rulership, a symbol historically reserved for male pharaohs. She smites enemies, makes offerings, and participates in rituals without Akhenaten beside her, suggesting she wielded sacred and political authority independently. This duality, nurturing mother and commanding ruler, defined her image, making her an icon of feminine power and divine presence. Her life, however, is marked by mystery. Despite her prominence, Nefertiti vanishes from the historical record in Akhenaten's later years. There is no tomb definitively attributed to her, no confirmed burial, no clear explanation of her fate. Did she die young, succumbing to illness or misfortune? Was she deliberately erased from history due to political intrigue? Or did she ascend to a role even greater than that of a queen, a ruler whose identity was deliberately obscured by subsequent dynasties? The questions surrounding her death and disappearance have fueled centuries of speculation. Some suggest she ruled as a pharaoh under the name Neferneferutin, possibly co-regent or even sole ruler for a brief period. Others propose that she may have fallen from favor, sidelined as political currents shifted. What is certain, however, is that her legacy endured in the art, culture, and religious transformations she helped bring about. Her partnership with Akhenaten was revolutionary. Together, they dismantled the traditional pantheon, replacing centuries of religious practice with devotion to Aten. They created Amarna as a new spiritual and political center, emphasizing light, order, and divine kingship. Nefertiti's presence in these reforms was active, not symbolic. She participated fully in the reshaping of religious rituals, the administration of the court, and the education of the royal children. She was inseparable from the revolution itself. The visual legacy of Nefertiti is unparalleled. The famous limestone bust, with its perfect symmetry, high cheekbones, and enigmatic gaze, captures not just her beauty but her authority. The sculptor preserved the essence of her presence, elegant, powerful, and inscrutable. Art from her era depicts her performing rituals, engaging in diplomacy, and guiding the king's decisions. In every depiction, there is a balance of grace and strength, nurturing and command. Nefertiti's influence extended beyond her lifetime. Even after Akhenaten's death, the echoes of their reign persisted. The Amarna period, though brief, left a lasting imprint on Egyptian art, religion, and governance. The sun disk, Aten, remained a symbol of transformative power. The stylistic innovations introduced in portraiture, intimate family scenes, exaggerated features, and expressive forms, would never entirely vanish. Yet, the true measure of her power lies in the paradox of her disappearance. Nefertiti was everywhere, central to one of Egypt's most radical experiments in culture and religion, and then suddenly absent. This vanishing only amplified her legend. The mystery of her fate, the questions surrounding her potential solo rule, and the enigma of her final years transformed her from a historical figure into a symbol. She became a representation of beauty, intelligence, political acumen, and divine feminine authority, her life a narrative that transcended the ordinary confines of history. Even in death, or perhaps because of it, Nefertiti inspired devotion, speculation, and awe. She embodies the intersection of human ambition and divine iconography. Her story reminds us that history often records not just the facts of life, but the power of presence, influence, and legacy. To understand Nefertiti is to understand more than just a queen or a consort. She is a lens through which we see the potential for female authority, the dynamics of political partnership, and the transformative power of vision and courage. She reshaped her society's religious structure, its visual culture, and its conception of royal family life. She navigated the complex intersection of divinity, politics, and family with a skill that allowed her to dominate not just the ceremonial, but also the practical realms of power. Even centuries later, her presence continues to captivate historians, artists, and the public alike. Her image, her actions, and the questions surrounding her disappearance invite exploration, debate, and wonder. Every depiction, every inscription, every fragment of art from the Amarna period carries a piece of her story. She is at once known and unknown, present and absent, human and divine. Her partnership with Akhenaten demonstrates a rare fusion of personal and political revolution. The reforms they enacted were not merely religious. They were deeply social, affecting the lives of ordinary Egyptians, restructuring cities, and redefining what it meant to be a ruler. Nefertiti's role was central to this transformation. She was not confined to a ceremonial backseat. She engaged actively in governance, religion, diplomacy, and family life, setting a precedent that few queens before or after could match. In life, she was brilliant, present, and transformative. In death, she became a mystery, her absence amplifying her legend. Nefertiti is a reminder that power, beauty, and influence are not limited by gender or circumstance. She reshaped her world and left a legacy that still resonates across millennia. To glimpse Nefertiti in her time is to see a woman at the height of influence, daring to challenge conventions, to lead alongside a revolutionary king, to embody both grace and power. Her life reflects the potential for boldness, intelligence, and vision to reshape society. And though history may have turned away, her story remains vibrant, compelling, and immortal. Nefertiti, a name that whispers across the millennia, carrying with it echoes of power, beauty, and the enigma of a life that history seems both to celebrate and to obscure. To understand her, one must first understand the world she entered, a world of unyielding tradition, of gods whose faces adorned temples and whose names were etched into eternity. A world where queens were often relegated to the shadows, their influence indirect, their power subtle. And then came Nefertiti, and she changed everything. Her origins remain shrouded in mystery. Some suggest she was a foreign princess, sent to Egypt in a carefully orchestrated political alliance, a daughter of some distant court, chosen to bring unity, peace, or advantage. Others insist she was Egyptian, perhaps the daughter of a high-ranking official named I, or even a relative of Akhenaten, though records are frustratingly silent. Some speculate she may have been a sister to the future pharaoh. These theories swirl like sand in the desert wind, unproven yet tantalizing, as elusive as Nefertiti herself. What is certain is that when she appeared in Akhenaten's life, she did so not as a passive consort, but as a force in her own right. She became visible immediately, a presence as unmistakable as sunlight on the Nile. She was more than an accessory to a king. She was an active participant in the religious and cultural revolution that would reshape Egypt. Together, Nefertiti and Akhenaten would dismantle the centuries-old pantheon of Egyptian gods, replacing it with a singular devotion to the sun disk, Aten. It was a near heretical upheaval, one that threatened the old priesthood and upended every aspect of civic and spiritual life. Yet Nefertiti did not merely observe this transformation. She was central to it. She led ceremonies, offered prayers, and performed rites previously reserved for kings alone. In art, she appears more frequently than Akhenaten himself, a queen in full command of both her body and her power, holding ritual implements, gazing outward, larger than life. Her visibility was unprecedented. She was present not just in religious ceremonies, but in depictions of domestic and political life as well. Reliefs show her with her daughters, heads tilted toward the sun, engaging in tender gestures that were unheard of in previous dynasties. Pharaohs had long been portrayed as distant gods, their families formal, static, and devoid of warmth. But in the Amarna period, under Nefertiti's influence, art became intimate, fluid, even personal. The king and queen are depicted playing with their children, praying beneath the rays of the Aten, engaging in rituals with gestures that convey affection and connection. Nefertiti was not only a political partner, she was a mother, a nurturer, a visible force in the spiritual life of the nation. Yet, despite her extraordinary visibility, history begins to lose sight of her around year 12 of Akhenaten's 17-year reign. Her name vanishes from inscriptions, her image fades from art. There is no tomb attributed to her, no grand funerary procession, no ritual mourning for a woman who had been central to the spiritual and political upheaval of Egypt. The disappearance is abrupt, jarring, a black hole in the record of history. Scholars have offered several explanations, none definitive. The simplest, perhaps, is that she died. Childbirth was perilous, even for royalty, and records suggest that around this same time, her second daughter may have also vanished from the historical record, hinting at the possibility of a dual tragedy. Yet if this were the case, why is there no elaborate burial, no tribute, no temples erected in her memory? She was revered like a living goddess. A quiet, private death seems implausible. Another theory is political. Perhaps Nefertiti fell from favor. Akhenaten, increasingly isolated and preoccupied with his monotheistic vision, may have sidelined her, elevating another consort in her stead. Some historians suggest a figure named Smenkhare, a mysterious ruler appearing briefly in historical records, may have replaced her. The details remain murky. Was Smenkhare a male co-regent, a half-brother, or even Nefertiti herself under a different name? And here, the most provocative theory emerges, that Nefertiti did not vanish at all, but transformed. Evidence hints at a female ruler named Neferneferuiten, appearing in inscriptions during Akhenaten's final years, referring to the king as her beloved. Could this have been Nefertiti ascending as pharaoh in her own right? If so, she would have joined a rare lineage of female rulers in Egyptian history, like Hatshepsut before her. Yet even this tantalizing theory is incomplete. Neferneferuiten's reign ended abruptly, giving way to Tutankhamun, the boy king whose brief life would become legendary, not for deeds in life, but for the treasures entombed with him. Tutankhamun's rise raises further questions. He was almost certainly Akhenaten's son, but the identity of his mother remains uncertain. Was Nefertiti his stepmother, guiding him from behind the scenes? Or was she his biological mother, placing him as a young child in the midst of her waning power? Regardless, the early decisions of Tutankhamun's reign, particularly the reversal of Akhenaten's religious reforms, suggest he was guided by experienced hands familiar with court politics, religious rituals, and the delicate balance of public perception. Could Nefertiti, hidden from public view but still commanding influence, have been the guiding force? Evidence is suggestive but inconclusive. One compelling piece comes from Tutankhamun's tomb itself. A golden shrine depicts a woman anointing the young king, her features strikingly similar to Nefertiti's. If this was her, it implies that even in apparent absence, she remained at the heart of Egypt's power, navigating the transition between her husband's radical vision and the restoration of the old order. Without her guidance, the young king's reign might have faltered. Yet, despite her possible influence, her name was deliberately erased from temples, omitted from king lists, and scrubbed from official memory. A woman who had ruled like a god was transformed into absence. And yet, paradoxically, it is this very erasure that immortalized her. Her legacy endured because in searching for Tutankhamun, the world rediscovered Nefertiti. Her most enduring physical legacy is, of course, the limestone bust discovered in 1912 by German archaeologist Ludwig Borchardt. Excavated from the ruins of the sculptor Thutmose's studio at Amarna, the bust captures Nefertiti in exquisite detail. High cheekbones, a long, elegant neck, the blue crown marking her sovereignty, and a gaze both serene and commanding. One eye remains unfinished, a silent mystery left from the workshop's final days. The sculpture speaks not just of beauty, but of intelligence, authority, and an almost palpable presence. The bust, now housed in Berlin, is itself a source of controversy. Egypt has repeatedly requested its return, arguing that it belongs in the land of its creation, where the queen once stood beneath the rays of the Aten. Germany has resisted, citing fragility and preservation concerns, yet the debate underscores Nefertiti's ongoing cultural significance. She is more than a historical figure. She is a global icon of feminine power, intelligence, and mystery. Nefertiti's life challenges conventional narratives of women in antiquity. She was not a passive figure, nor was she content to exist in the shadows of her husband's reign. She shaped policy, led religious transformation, and influenced the next generation of rulers. Her disappearance only amplifies her mystique, inviting endless speculation and fascination. She vanished from history, yet left behind traces that continue to inspire, captivate, and provoke inquiry. Even her art reflects duality: nurturing mother, commanding ruler, tender consort, active participant in religious revolution. In reliefs, she is depicted offering to Aten, standing beside Akhenaten as equal in devotion and authority. She smites enemies, rides in chariots, oversees governance, all while retaining the grace and poise captured in the Berlin bust. Her image conveys both power and subtlety, the hallmarks of a ruler who understood not only divine authority, but human perception. Historians continue to puzzle over the final years of her life. Did she indeed rule as Nefertiti? Was she sidelined politically, or did she voluntarily step away from public life? Was she the mother of Tutankhamun, or merely a guiding influence behind the throne? These questions, unresolved, are part of the enduring fascination with Nefertiti. She represents the tantalizing intersection of historical fact, speculation, and myth, a figure whose very absence amplifies her presence in the cultural imagination. Her disappearance highlights a truth about power. It can be both visible and invisible, celebrated and erased. Nefertiti's legacy is a testament to the enduring impact of women who transcend their era, shaping religion, culture, politics, and art, even as the historical record seeks to silence them. She is a figure of contradictions, present yet absent, nurturing yet commanding, mortal yet divine. The mystery of her tomb, the uncertainty surrounding her death, and the ongoing debates about her role during Tutankhamun's early reign all contribute to her mythos. She is, perhaps, the ultimate enigma of ancient Egypt, a woman who reshaped her world and then vanished, leaving behind only fragments of her presence, art, inscriptions, and whispers in history. And so we remember her, not just as a queen or a consort, but as a revolutionary, a mother, a possible pharaoh, a symbol of beauty, authority, and enduring mystery. The gaze of her bust, serene yet commanding, continues to captivate the imagination, bridging millennia, reminding us that history is not merely a record of events, but a tapestry woven from presence, absence, and the power of legacy. Nefertiti was everywhere, and then she was nowhere. Yet, paradoxically, her absence made her immortal. She challenges us to reconsider the boundaries of power, the role of women in history, and the ways in which memory itself can be both selective and transformative. She stands as a beacon of possibility, that one person, a single individual, can reshape a civilization, influence the course of religion, and leave a mark so profound that the world cannot forget. Her life is a narrative of light and shadow, visibility and erasure, influence and mystery. The lessons of her story resonate across time. That presence is powerful, that influence extends beyond life, and that the human desire to understand, to remember, and to reconstruct the past ensures that figures like Nefertiti will never truly be lost. Even today, as scholars debate her origins, her role, and her fate, the image of Nefertiti, poised, regal, enigmatic, remains a potent symbol. Her story reminds us that history is not only what is recorded, but also what is lost, what is interpreted, and what is imagined. In that space between certainty and speculation, Nefertiti reigns eternal, a queen of both the known and the unknowable. Her name, her visage, and her story continue to inspire artists, historians, and dreamers. She is a testament to the power of women in history and a reminder that influence can persist long after the end of a life, long after the erasure of names and images from stone. Nefertiti is timeless, unforgettable, and ever-present, even in absence, an enduring symbol of beauty, authority, and the mysterious potency of history itself. Nefertiti. Her name drifts across the ages like incense, carried on the winds of memory long after the stones of her empire have been worn smooth. She became immortal, not in gold, not in the cold permanence of monuments, but in the hearts and minds of those who dare to remember her. Her face, captured in limestone and pigment, may lie still, but the story it tells lives on, echoing louder across centuries than the walls of any temple ever could. She exists in the space between stone and silence, between what we know and what we long to believe. Few figures in ancient history have inspired such relentless fascination, such profound mystery. She is a paradox, one of the most documented women of her era, yet still largely unknowable. Across millennia, she has been imagined as goddess, as master strategist, as co-ruler, as tragic heroine, as political manipulator, as romantic figure lost in the shifting sands of Egypt's religious upheaval. Some see in her the living embodiment of divine beauty, the human face of an abstract ideal. Others see the calculating mind behind one of the most audacious religious revolutions the world had ever witnessed. Yet all of these interpretations, as compelling as they are, fall short of the truth, because we are peering across time, attempting to comprehend someone who intentionally, or perhaps instinctively, remains partially hidden. Nefertiti's power lay not in rebellion, but in presence. She carved her authority into the visual and spiritual language of her time with poise, elegance, and the commanding weight of personality. While Akhenaten imagined a monotheistic worship of the sun disk, Aten, it was Nefertiti who embodied it in the human form. She was the bridge between the divine and the mortal, the living expression of sacred ideal. In the reliefs and sculptures of Amarna, she stands not merely as queen beside king, but as co-architect of a revolution, her arms outstretched in ritual, her gaze focused, her form monumental. She is everywhere, the family altar, the royal temple, the battlefield, and yet, as suddenly as she appears, she vanishes from history. Around the 12th year of Akhenaten's reign, her name disappears from the inscriptions, her image fades from reliefs and murals, and the silence left behind is as profound as it is unnerving. Historians have wrestled with her disappearance for generations. The simplest explanation is the one often whispered in passing: perhaps she died. Childbirth was perilous in any era, and there are indications that one of her daughters may have also vanished from the record around the same time. A tragic coincidence, or perhaps a family calamity. Yet a quiet death seems incongruous for a woman who had lived so publicly, whose presence had been etched into the very architecture and art of the kingdom. No tomb, No grand ceremonial burial, no ritual offerings, nothing. Political theories abound. Perhaps she fell from favor, sidelined by Akhenaten's increasingly monomaniacal devotion to Aten, or replaced by another consort. Perhaps she transformed her identity entirely, becoming the enigmatic figure Neferneferutin, a female ruler who reappears briefly in the historical record, referring to the king as her beloved and exercising authority in her own right. Was she preparing to rule Egypt as pharaoh, stepping fully into the role that her depictions hinted at for years? Or was she quietly guiding the young Tutankhamun, steering the throne through turbulent times from the shadows? Tutankhamun himself adds another layer to the enigma. His father was almost certainly Akhenaten, but the identity of his mother is unknown. Was Nefertiti his stepmother, a guardian figure navigating palace intrigue and religious upheaval? Or was she his biological mother, a queen shaping the boy king as he rose to inherit a fractured kingdom? Evidence from Tutankhamun's tomb, particularly depictions of a woman with features resembling Nefertiti anointing the young king, suggests she may have been present in governance even after public records erased her existence. And yet, despite her possible ongoing influence, her name was deliberately scrubbed from history. Temples were defaced, inscriptions chiseled away, her legacy buried beneath the weight of political reversal. Akhenaten's radical monotheism was swiftly replaced with the old pantheon, and in the process, Nefertiti's prominence was deliberately diminished. And yet, paradoxically, it is this erasure that immortalized her. In attempting to remove her from memory, history created a vacuum into which fascination poured. Her story survived precisely because it was incomplete, a tantalizing riddle for future generations to puzzle over. Her most enduring legacy is the limestone bust discovered in 1912 in the studio of the sculptor Thutmose at Amarna. The bust captures a woman poised between worlds, beauty and power, serenity and authority, the earthly and the divine. High cheekbones, a long neck, a perfectly shaped crown, and one eye unfinished. Each detail conveys a subtle interplay of imperfection and intention, humanity and transcendence. The sculpture does not merely depict a woman. It demands acknowledgement of her presence, her intelligence, her command. It is both portrait and proclamation, a silent voice that refuses to be ignored. Yet Nefertiti's story is not confined to art. Immortality in ancient Egypt was never simply a matter of stone and gold. It was the endurance of memory. To have one's name spoken, to have one's image seen, to have one's story retold, that was eternal life. And in this measure, Nefertiti has achieved the pinnacle of immortality. Her influence persists across continents, across centuries. Her visage adorns museum walls. Her name is spoken in classrooms and lecture halls. Her story retold in novels, films, and documentaries. She has become archetypal, a canvas upon which every generation projects its own ideas of power, beauty, and female agency. And yet, as we consider Nefertiti, it is impossible not to think of patience, persistence, and human ingenuity in other corners of the world. Consider, for example, the Longji rice terraces of southern China, carved across the precipitous mountains of Guangxi province. Locals call it the dragon's backbone, and the name is no mere metaphor. Viewed from a distance, the terraces ripple across the hills like the sinuous scales of a slumbering dragon, its body frozen in time, yet vibrant with life. The terraces are both landscape and architecture, culture and art, nature reshaped with reverence, not domination. These terraces began over 700 years ago, crafted by the Zhang and Yao peoples, ethnic minorities who had lived in these mountains for generations. There was no flat land, no mechanized tools, no shortcuts. Faced with steep, unforgiving slopes, they asked a simple question: how do we feed ourselves here? And with persistence, patience, and vision, they answered. Inch by inch, layer by layer, they carved horizontal veins into the mountainside, building stone walls to retain water and soil, designing channels to carry water from one level to the next. Mistakes could mean catastrophe, collapse, erosion, loss of crops. But the people of Longji learned to read the mountains, to work with them rather than against them. Over centuries, these terraces became more than agricultural infrastructure. They became a living testament to endurance and creativity. Water flows gently along each tier, seedlings sway in the breeze, and at dawn the mist drapes the terraces like the breath of the dragon itself. Each generation inherited not only the knowledge of cultivation, but the philosophy of harmony, that human labor could shape the earth without wounding it, that persistence and care could bend a harsh environment into a source of life. Walking among the terraces is an act of reverence. One sees the labor of countless hands, the meticulous stacking of stones, the careful sculpting of each ridge and channel. It is a landscape that feels alive, pulsing with the memory of those who toiled and those who learned from their toil. It is a monument to patience, a whisper of endurance across centuries. And like Nefertiti, it is a reminder that legacy is not only about monumental power, but about the quiet, persistent shaping of the world in ways both tangible and symbolic. These stories of queens and mountains converge in their lesson. Both Nefertiti and the dragon's backbone represent human aspiration stretching against the constraints of time, geography, and circumstance. One, a single individual reshaping culture and belief in a patriarchal world. The other, generations of people reshaping the land to sustain life. One immortalized in marble and memory, the other etched into stone and water, visible only to those willing to walk among the terraces and observe. Both stand as proof that endurance and creativity can defy the erosion of time, whether through art, story, or human labor. Nefertiti's life and disappearance, like the terraces, demand reflection. Her story is incomplete, fragmented, tantalizing. Her disappearance is part of her allure. She exists in the questions historians ask, in the debates over her co-regency, her influence over Tutankhamun, her final resting place. Her legacy is a puzzle, a challenge, a provocation. And as with the terraces, the beauty lies in persistence. The persistence to wonder, to seek, to imagine, and to remember. Her face, immortalized in limestone, meets us across the centuries with serenity and authority, a silent challenge. The terraces rise from the mountains, layer upon layer, carved with devotion and patience, a living puzzle of human ingenuity. Nefertiti and the dragon's backbone are mirrors in time. One human-made, both enduring beyond the simple measurement of days, years, and lifetimes. Both teach that immortality is not simply survival, but influence, memory, and the quiet defiance of the erasure of time. And so, when we speak her name, when we trace the contours of the terraces, when we gaze upon a bust in Berlin or walk among the rippling dragon-shaped fields, we are participating in a continuum. We are witnesses to what human hands, human vision, and human perseverance can accomplish. We are reminded that legacy is never just about monuments or tombs, but about the imprint left on human memory and imagination. Nefertiti may never have left a tomb. She may have vanished from public view. Tutankhamun may have inherited the throne, yet the story of the queen who dared to rule, who dared to embody the divine, remains vivid. The Longji terraces may not have a single face, yet the collective effort of generations carved mountains into sustenance and art. Both survive because someone cared, because someone shaped them, because someone remembered. And that, perhaps, is the truest form of immortality. Across time and geography, across stone, story, and water, Nefertiti and the dragon's backbone remind us that human endeavor, whether the quiet shaping of the earth or the bold reshaping of culture, carries resonance far beyond the limits of mortality. They endure because they were not only made to be seen, but to be remembered, to provoke wonder, and to whisper to those who come after, "We were here, we created, we persisted." In the end, immortality belongs to those whose influence reaches beyond the confines of their own lives. Nefertiti achieved it through presence, vision, and mystery. The terraces achieved it through labor, patience, and communion with the land. Both are testaments to what humans can accomplish when they refuse to be constrained, when they rise against inertia, when they shape the world around them with purpose. And both will endure, so long as humans continue to see, to wonder, and to remember. If the dragon's backbone were alive, it would pulse not with fire or flame, but with water. This is the lifeblood of the Longji rice terraces, flowing quietly down the mountain slopes without pumps or engines, tracing channels dug by hands hardened by centuries of toil. Rainwater and natural springs slip gently from high peaks into narrow ditches and earthen canals, descending terrace by terrace, pooling, flowing, and nourishing each plot with precision born of generations of observation and intuition. Gravity is the farmer's silent ally. Every inch, every channel, every stone gate has been placed to allow the water to move in rhythm with the mountain, ensuring that no plot suffers drought or flood. It is a choreography performed in silence. Guardians of the terraces walk along the ridges daily, inspecting the channels, adjusting the gates, listening to the sound of flowing water as if it were music. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and the harmony of the mountain is broken. Farming here is not merely labor. It is an art form, a dialogue with the mountain itself. The water mirrors the sky. In spring, flooded paddies become glass, reflecting clouds, sun, and even stars on clear nights. In summer, the paddies shimmer green, a living sea of rice stalks swaying in unison. In autumn, golden grain glistens like molten metal. In winter, snow and frost replace the water, and the dragon sleeps, waiting for spring to awaken it once more. The people of Longji measure time differently. Where the world counts seconds, minutes, and hours, they follow the rhythm of seasons, rainfall, frost, and thaw. The dragon lives in the pulses of the mountain. The first trickle of melted snow, the sound of returning frogs, the scent of wet soil. And when spring arrives, it begins not with flowers, but with water, breathing life into the waiting terraces, setting the rhythm for planting. Farmers, young and old, rise with the mist, walking barefoot along narrow ridges, carrying baskets balanced on their backs, straw hats shielding eyes from the early sun. Each rice seedling is transplanted by hand. The rhythm is almost sacred. Bend, press, plant, step, repeat. Children follow the adults, splashing in the shallow water, learning not from textbooks, but from living experience. Spacing, depth, and alignment are learned through touch and observation, passed down as living memory. Planting is ceremony as much as labor. Blessings are offered to mountain spirits, songs are sung, and elders scatter the first seedlings as offerings to ancestors. Every field planted is a covenant with the earth, a promise to sustain life for generations to come. As green shoots rise from the water, the terraces become more than farmland. They are symbols of hope, resilience, and continuity. Each seed is a prayer, each row a defiance against scarcity, each terrace a testament to patience. The mountain itself seems to breathe, and the human hand, guided by tradition and intuition, keeps pace with its rhythm. This is a landscape alive not because of technology, but because of devotion, knowledge, and unbroken generations. Nestled within the terraces are the villages, Pinyin, Dazai, Jinking. Each settlement clings to the mountainside like a memory, a testament to human adaptation. Timber homes on stilts rise from the slopes, their dark rooftops echoing the lines of the terraces below, appearing like lanterns floating on waves of green. Life here is communal and slow. Meals cooked over wood fires, smoke rising into the cool mountain air, the scent of rice, bamboo, and wine blending with the forest. Families live together across generations, sharing labor, stories, and rituals. The Yao people, instantly recognizable by the women's long black hair coiled into intricate designs atop their heads, preserve traditions that stretch back centuries. Some let their hair fall like silk waterfalls when bathing in the river, a gesture of grace and myth. Clothing is hand-woven, dyed in deep indigo, looms creak in quiet rooms, and songs echo through bamboo forests during festivals. Music is played on bronze drums, red pipes, and bamboo flutes. Weddings are celebrated with ritual dances, and harvests are welcomed with song. Hospitality is instinctive, not transactional. Guests are offered tea brewed from local leaves, rice wine, carved gourds, and the stories of elders who remember life before electricity reached these peaks. Every aspect of life here is entwined with history and spirituality. The terraces are not merely agricultural constructs. They are living museums, classrooms, and temples. Their existence is a testament to patience, observation, and a deep understanding of the environment. No machine, no shortcut, no modern convenience could replicate the elegance of these mountains. Each curve, each canal, each terrace is the imprint of human ingenuity harmonizing with nature. Over centuries, the terraces have survived floods, landslides, and the encroachment of modernity. They endure because the people of Longji maintain not only the land but the traditions that shape it. Children learn from elders not only how to plant and harvest, but how to observe, listen, and anticipate the mountain's moods. Every drop of water, every stone gate, every ridge tells a story of centuries of labor, patience, and respect. Walking through these terraces is a meditation. The mind slows, attuned to the rhythm of water and wind. The terraces ripple like a living organism, every layer connected, every movement purposeful. Visitors describe the experience as surreal. The mountain becomes a mirror, reflecting sky and earth in perfect harmony, a landscape where humans and nature coexist seamlessly. It is both work and worship, labor and art. Even the flow of water is carefully orchestrated. Channels capture snowmelt and rainfall, guiding it terrace by terrace. Overflow is managed, leakage corrected, timing adjusted by hands that have learned the mountain's language over decades. The water is a silent teacher, a pulse of life, a reminder that control here is subtle, adaptive, and respectful. The farmer's role is both guardian and musician, orchestrating harmony between land and life. Through spring, summer, autumn, and winter, the terraces evolve, reflecting both season and labor. In spring, mirrored paddies shimmer like jade. In summer, a vibrant green waves across the mountains. In autumn, gold dominates. In winter, frost and snow rest in silence. Each cycle is a continuation of centuries of knowledge, passed down, preserved, and adapted with patience. Life is measured not in days or years, but in water, soil, and sunlight. The terraces are also a story of endurance. The mountains could have been abandoned, the slopes too steep, the work too laborious. Yet human determination prevailed. Generations of Zhang and Yao people molded the mountains into a living, breathing organism. In doing so, they created not just sustenance, but beauty, culture, and identity. Their efforts transcend agriculture. They created a monument to patience, skill, and harmony with the land. In the villages, culture thrives alongside labor. Music, dance, ritual, and community persist. Children learn from adults, not from books, but by living in rhythm with the terraces, the seasons, and the mountain itself. Each family, each home, each village contributes to the survival of a tradition that stretches back centuries. Here, modernity and ancient practice coexist, not as opposing forces, but as layers of continuity. Walking the dragon's backbone is to walk through history. Each terrace is a testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and patience. Every reflection in the paddies, every ripple in the water, every green shoot is a reminder that progress need not be violent or destructive, that human life and natural life can exist in harmony. The terraces are a conversation across generations, a dialogue between human hands and mountain stone. And so, as the sun rises over the dragon's backbone, spilling golden light across mirrored waters, the mountain breathes. Farmers step into the paddies, hands in mud, hearts in the sky. The dragon wakes, patient and eternal. Seeds are planted. Water flows. Life continues, measured not in minutes or machines, but in devotion, persistence, and memory. Here, The future is cultivated one seed at a time, in the rhythm of seasons, the whisper of water, and the quiet pulse of human endurance. In Longji, the terraces are more than rice fields. They are a living testament to the artistry, patience, and resilience of generations who worked not to conquer the mountain, but to collaborate with it. They remind us that great achievements are not always monuments in stone or victories on battlefields. Sometimes, they are subtle, layered, patient, and deeply human. Each terrace, each channel, each reflection in the water is a story told without words, a story of survival, harmony, and the enduring spirit of people who understand the pulse of the land. To walk among the terraces is to witness time itself made tangible. Centuries fold into each layer of earth, each canal, each rice stalk. Tradition endures because it has been nurtured with care, because it has been measured against the patience of mountains and the flow of water. In every flooded paddy, in every green stalk, in every village perched on the mountain ridge, the dragon's backbone continues to breathe. Its heartbeat is the rhythm of life, cultivated over generations, a testament to the extraordinary capacity of humans to harmonize with the world around them. And so the dragon sleeps and wakes, flows and rests, endures and thrives, not as a myth, not as legend, but as a living, breathing testament to what human hands, patience, and persistence can achieve. The dragon's backbone endures, not because it resists time, but because it bends with it. The terraces rise and fall like the sinews of a sleeping giant, coiled across the mountains, a testament to patience carved by generations of human hands. Water flows through its veins, descending terrace by terrace, pooling, trickling, nourishing. It does so with quiet precision, requiring no engines, no pumps, no modern intervention. Only trust, intuition, and intimate knowledge passed down from elders to children. The dragon does not rush. Neither do the people who guard it. They know the pulse of the mountains, the rhythm of the rain, the whispers of the mist. They understand that to survive here is to live in harmony with the land. Tourists now climb the paths and ridges, cameras in hand, smartphones capturing every angle. Yet the terraces, and the villagers who tend them, continue largely undisturbed. Rice still grows. Rituals mark the seasons. Offerings are made, songs are sung, blessings are whispered into the wind. Modernity arrives slowly, gently, like water spilling from one terrace to the next. Nothing is forced. Nothing breaks. Life flows as it always has, measured in drops and seasons, in soil and water, in the quiet persistence of people who understand that the mountain is more than land. It is living history. Walking these terraces is to step into layers of myth. The hills themselves are alive, humming with stories whispered through bamboo groves, carried on the wind, murmured from generation to generation. For the people of Longji, the mountains are sacred. They are inhabited by spirits, shaped by gods, honored in every planting, every harvest, every moment of labor. Among the oldest tales is that of the sleeping dragon. Its body stretches across the ridges, its spine coiled in the terraces themselves. When mist rolls down from the valleys, shrouding paddies in white, it is said that the dragon stirs, breathing gently in slumber, its scales rising and falling with every inhalation. Another legend tells of divine generosity. During a time of famine, ancestors climbed the steep mountains to pray for survival. The heavens answered, sending rain and instructing them to carve the hills into terraces so rice could grow. Guided by the dragon, they worked inch by inch, season by season, hand by hand, and ever since, the mountain has been honored with reverence. Trees are never cut without prayer. Channels are never dug without song. The land is treated as a living being. These beliefs are not written in books, but preserved in ritual, in ceremony, in the rhythm of work that binds the present to countless generations past. Water carries life, but also sacredness. Each spring, offerings are made before releasing the first stream into the terraces. A few drops of rice wine, a whispered prayer, gestures so small they seem ordinary, yet they anchor the people to their history, to their culture, to the mountain itself. Whether or not one believes in dragons or spirits, the air is thick with reverence. The terraces are a dialogue, a covenant between humans and nature, and the silence of the mountains holds a power no machine or map can capture. For centuries, the dragon's backbone remained a secret, hidden in the clouds, known only to those who called it home. Its remoteness preserved it, as did the generations of farmers who walked its ridges, measured its slopes, learned its moods. But nothing sacred can remain untouched forever. Roads climbed the mountains, wires followed, and the world arrived. Cameras, tourists, and smartphones now track every inch of the terraces. The mountains, weathered and ancient, faced a question they had never been asked. How do you survive the modern world? At first, the villagers feared. They worried the terraces might be sold to developers, that concrete would replace timber, that culture would be reduced to costume. But the people of Longji endured. They adapted, not by abandoning tradition, but by weaving the present into it, thread by careful thread. Homes became ghost houses, not resorts, but family stays, where visitors eat meals of freshly harvested rice, steamed in bamboo, or greens picked that morning. They sleep in stilt houses that rise from the slope, roosters announcing sunrise, with smoke curling into the mountain air. It is not tourism staged for display. It is life, lived honestly, alongside the cycles of planting and harvest. The rice continues to grow. Each season, villagers flood the terraces, plant by hand, harvest with sickles worn smooth by generations. Children attend school, yet by dusk they wade into water, learning the rhythm of planting, the spacing of seedlings, the way the soil yields beneath gentle hands. Modernity has arrived, but it has not replaced life here. It has augmented it, provided income while leaving tradition intact. The terraces are a place where two worlds coexist, balanced like the levels of water descending from terrace to terrace. Festivals are louder than they were centuries ago. Microphones amplify voices where drums once did. Signs in Mandarin and English mark sacred springs and paths. Yet the essence remains. Offerings are still made. Elders still lead songs. The terraces do not resist change. They absorb it, integrating each new influence while remaining true to their own rhythm. The dragon's backbone survives not because it is frozen in time, but because it bends with it. It breathes, adjusts, and continues. Time here is cyclical, measured not in hours or minutes, but in growth and harvest, in water and seed, in reflection and ripples. Spring arrives first as a mirror, paddies flooded, water reflecting the sky like silver glass. Clouds drift not just above but below your feet, the terraces themselves acting as mirrors of the heavens. The mountain comes alive. Life stirs beneath the surface. Summer follows, green shoots rising tall and straight, carpeting the hills in vibrant emerald. The terraces look like ribbons of silk cascading down the mountainside. Frogs call, water flows, farmers labor from dawn until dusk, their conical hats bobbing like sails on a jade sea. Autumn transforms the terraces. The rice matures, golden and heavy, catching sunlight and wind. Villages erupt in song and celebration. Sticky rice is prepared, families gather, drums echo through the hills, and the dragon, fully awake, offers its bounty. Winter is a quiet interlude. Water drains from the terraces, snow or frost dusting the steps like powdered lace. The dragon sleeps, resting until the next awakening. Each season writes a different poem, an ongoing narrative of life, labor, and harmony. The beauty of Longji lies not only in its shape, but in its cycles. Spring reflects, summer grows, autumn feeds, winter rests. Photographers chase the light, hoping to capture eternity, yet the terraces do not pause. They flow, they breathe, they teach. The dragon's backbone is more than rice, more than terraces, more than engineering. It is a living meditation, a promise renewed with each season. It is the story of humans choosing to live with the land, not against it. The ancestors of Longji could have chosen the valleys, the flatlands, the easy paths. But they stayed on the slopes, listening to the stone, learning the pulse of water, studying the mountain. They made the impossible ordinary. Each curve, each terrace, each stone wall carries a lesson, not only about agriculture, but about patience, legacy, and respect. These terraces were not built in decades. They were built over centuries, layer by layer, hands guiding, hearts observing, knowledge passed quietly from one generation to the next. Yet nothing about Longji is static. The terraces are alive. They shift with weather, bend to the needs of the people, respond to the patterns of the world. Every rainfall, every frost, every gust of wind shapes them. The terraces are resilient because they are flexible, because they grow with time rather than resisting it. The dragon's backbone teaches a philosophy of life. Endurance is not rigidity, and strength lies in adaptation. The villages remain small museums of culture and community. Houses built of timber and bamboo rise on stilts, echoing the curves of the terraces. Children run along ridges, elders share stories, music floats across valleys, the sound of bronze drums mixing with birdsong and water. Festivals mark planting and harvest, marriages and births, songs and offerings keeping tradition alive. The terraces are a place where heritage is not preserved for display, but lived in every action. Tourists arrive and depart, yet the rhythm of life persists. Rice remains the heartbeat, water the lifeblood, mountains the guardians. The dragon's backbone does not resist change. It absorbs, integrates, and continues. The terraces endure because humans have chosen to coexist with the land, to respect its shape, its flow, and its secrets. Standing among them for a full year, one witnesses not just the beauty but the rhythm of time itself. Spring mirrored in flooded paddies, summer rising in green waves, autumn glowing in gold, winter silent and frosted. The terraces teach patience, humility, and reverence. They are a living story, etched not in books but in soil, water, and stone. They are a testament to what humans can achieve when they listen, observe, and work with the world rather than against it. The dragon breathes. The water moves. The rice grows. Life continues, measured in seasons, in drops, in quiet persistence. Each curve, each terrace, each canal is a vow, a promise passed from generation to generation. It is a story of what happens when humans live with patience, with care, with harmony. Longji is not merely a marvel of engineering or agriculture. It is a testament to endurance, adaptation, and the quiet power of working with time. The terraces, like the dragon they mirror, continue to turn, season after season, century after century. They do not roar, they do not burn, yet they endure. They evolve, they breathe, they live. And in that living, they teach the world a profound lesson. Beauty, patience, and resilience are inseparable from one another, and the human hand, guided by wisdom and reverence, can transform the impossible into the ordinary, eternal, and sublime. They were never rigid. The terraces of Longji, the mountains of the dragon's backbone, the civilizations of the Nile, they all bend, adapt, endure. Even now, as the modern world climbs the hills with its signals and screens, the terraces remain grounded. They change, they shift, but they do not vanish, because their roots are not merely in soil. They are in story, in ritual, in the enduring act of planting a seed and trusting the sky to walk with it. Time moves differently here. History accumulates in layers, sedimented like soil in terraces or silt in the Nile. The dragon's backbone is not just a mountain. It is a living contract between humans and earth, signed with sweat and sun, renewed with every harvest. It reminds us that progress does not always roar. Sometimes it murmurs. Like a stream slipping over stone, greatness can be subtle, persistent, flowing quietly across centuries. Perhaps that is why these landscapes, these monuments of labor and belief, speak to so many farmers, travelers, dreamers, because they echo a truth we nearly forgot. The most lasting things in the world are built not with force, but with rhythm, humility, and time. The dragon sleeps, and the people endure, and the mountains remember. And yet, elsewhere, beneath another sun, another civilization, the sands and currents of time hide secrets that stir quietly, unseen. Most visitors to Giza lift their eyes to the pyramids and the gaze of the Sphinx, awed by their monumental presence, unaware that beneath their feet, the Nile whispers hints of forgotten stories. In the quiet shallows near the ancient village of Abu Rosh, a strange, shadowed tale waits. Here lies a shape that has evaded notice, submerged beneath waterlogged silt, hidden from the tourist trail, but persistent in memory. An underwater sphinx, the possibility of a civilization older than anything we thought we knew. Local fishermen have whispered about it for generations. They speak of a smooth-backed form, symmetrical too perfectly to be entirely natural. Its body, feline and leonine, emerges from mud and sediment when the Nile recedes during rare droughts. The curves, the proportions, the faint suggestion of a carved face, all defy coincidence. For decades, the shape has appeared only fleetingly, obscured by floodwaters and silt, seemingly suspended in a liminal space between myth and reality. Explorers who have ventured into these waters describe a sensation difficult to articulate. The land itself feels charged, resonant, as if memory clings to stone beneath mud. Sonar scans have revealed geometric outlines, rectangular formations, and linear patterns too precise to be random. Yet no official excavation has been sanctioned. The site remains untouched, a quiet enigma at the edge of recorded history. And if the submerged Sphinx could speak, what might it say about the world that once was? What civilizations, now forgotten, might it testify to? The legend of the underwater Sphinx emerged into global curiosity in the 1980s, when independent researchers and divers began publishing accounts of a massive, lion-bodied figure partially submerged near Giza. Grainy photographs and anecdotal reports could neither confirm nor deny its existence, yet they ignited fascination and speculation. Among the early proponents was an amateur Egyptologist who claimed to have witnessed the figure during a brief drought window. He described symmetry, leg forms, even what seemed to be a deliberate facial structure. To suggest that such a monument exists, hidden for millennia beneath silt, is to challenge the established narrative of Egyptian history. Egyptology rests upon structure, chronology, and evidence. The Great Sphinx, it is widely agreed, was constructed around 2500 BCE during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre. To assert that another Sphinx, partially submerged and perhaps predating this one, exists would require rewriting the timeline of civilization itself. Scholars reacted with caution, skepticism, and sometimes disdain. Without peer-reviewed excavation, carbon dating, or stratigraphic studies, the claims could not enter mainstream acceptance. Many dismissed it as a natural limestone formation shaped by water, an illusion born of human imagination and wishful thinking. Yet the photographs persisted. Sonar readings and aerial surveys hinted at deliberate placement, geometric alignment, and proportion. Patterns suggested intent, straight lines, right angles, symmetry of massive stone blocks arranged with knowledge. Some theorists, writers, and documentary filmmakers speculated wildly. Perhaps this Sphinx is a relic of a lost civilization, predating dynastic Egypt, a culture erased by the Sahara's drying, swallowed by floods, or forgotten by time. Some hinted at Atlantean connections, others at precursors to the pharaohs, communities that might have communicated knowledge to the architects of Giza centuries later. The debate remains unresolved. No official dig has taken place. No museum has claimed the Sphinx. It remains in its liminal state, partially buried in mud, waiting, silent, patient. Yet the possibility alone has profound implications. If it predates the pyramids, then our understanding of Egyptian civilization must stretch farther into prehistory. The Sahara, long considered a desert wasteland until relatively recent dynastic settlements, was once green, fertile, watered by rivers that flowed differently than they do today. Could the underwater Sphinx be a monument of that lost, lush world, carved when the Nile roamed wider and the Sahara was a savanna? Geological studies hint at this possibility. Dr. Robert Schoch, studying the weathering of the Great Sphinx, proposed that its enclosure had been eroded not by wind and sand alone, but by heavy, sustained rainfall, evidence of a climate more humid than Egypt has seen since at least 7000 BCE. If rainfall shaped the Sphinx over millennia, might water also conceal an older, submerged sibling, hidden beneath seasonal floods, clay-rich soil, and shifting river courses? The site near Abu Rosh lies in a basin geologically active, where ancient water tables rose and fell, depositing thick layers of silt and clay. Erosion marks, smooth and rounded, suggest prolonged exposure to running water rather than wind. Sonar scans hint at foundations, linear stone placements, possible carved surfaces. Certain blocks appear intentionally squared, corners defined. Lion-like haunches and shoulders emerge when waters recede, their geometry defying purely natural explanation. Critics of the underwater Sphinx argue convincingly that the human brain sees patterns where none exist. Water erosion can mimic design. Limestone fractures in predictable ways under prolonged flood stress. And yet, the combination of features, the positioning, proportion, curvature, and apparent alignment with celestial markers, invites more questions than simple dismissal allows. Consider the wider context. The Sahara underwent dramatic changes in the millennia preceding dynastic Egypt. Wet periods gave way to aridness, river courses shifted, and entire communities may have risen and fallen with little to no surviving record. If a pre-dynastic culture carved the underwater Sphinx, it could represent evidence of human civilization older than any textual record in Egypt, predating papyrus, hieroglyphs, and monumental stonework as we currently understand it. Evidence of such an advanced society, lost to climate and catastrophe, would be revolutionary. Comparisons are drawn with other prehistoric sites around the world. Göbekli Tepe, built around 9600 BCE by hunter-gatherers in what is now Turkey, features megalithic pillars carved with animals, predating Stonehenge by millennia. Could the underwater Sphinx be Egypt's equivalent? Could its creators have left no written record, their culture obliterated by time and the shifting Nile, yet their monumental intent preserved beneath layers of sediment and water? If so, stone remembers what humans forget. The underwater Sphinx, half buried, tells a quiet story of floods, of rainfall, of shifting civilizations, of knowledge now hidden beneath layers of mud. Its grooves and curves are records of labor, geometry, and intention. Its location near seasonal floodplains hints at ritual, placement, or reverence tied to water cycles long before dynasties. The artifact, if it is one, speaks not only of artistry but of observation, of understanding hydrology, erosion, and the land. This figure has persisted in obscurity for millennia, a monument waiting for recognition, its message buried in silence. The possibility of its existence challenges assumptions, sparks inquiry, and inspires awe. If confirmed, it could redefine the origins of monumental architecture, the timeline of civilization in the Nile Valley, and our understanding of human ingenuity. It stands as a reminder. The past is never fully known, and the earth often keeps its secrets carefully, revealing them only to those willing to look, to measure, to question. Time flows like the Nile, and so too do questions of history. The underwater Sphinx, whether natural or human-made, acts as a bridge between what we know and what we imagine. It reminds us of a world before dynasties, before papyrus, before recorded memory, when humans carved, prayed, and worked with water and stone, leaving traces of themselves for thousands of years. In its quiet submersion, it teaches patience, observation, humility. Every silt-covered line, every curve emerging from the mud, every sonar-detected rectangle, is a call to remember. The past is vast, layered, and sometimes hidden beneath floodwaters. Egypt's story may be far older than textbooks claim, and the Nile itself may be keeping secrets too vast for the human mind to grasp in one lifetime. The underwater Sphinx sleeps, and yet, even in silence, It whispers, "The world is older than we think." Civilizations rise and fall, rivers change course, deserts swallow memory, but stone endures. Human hands left a mark that water could not erase. The lion waits beneath the mud, patiently, enduring. And when the world is ready, perhaps we too will be ready to listen. The stone lies there, beneath layers of Nile silt and time, heavily worn but not without purpose. Its contours are deliberate, carved in lines that trace the flowing pattern of the monument itself. Nature has weathered it, yes, but in a way that accentuates its geometry rather than erasing it. Water follows the curves, sediments accumulate in pockets, and the monument seems to resist randomness, holding an imprint of deliberate intent. Around it, layers of mud and clay reveal an ancient environment. Early Holocene Egypt, when the land was green, fertile, and shaped by floods, not deserts. It was a world of rivers, lakes, and seasonal deluges, when humanity's imprint on the land was subtle, intimate, and attuned to natural rhythms. If a monument had indeed been carved in that era, it could have endured centuries before being swallowed by mud, forgotten by migrating populations, buried under shifting currents of the Nile, until today, when whispers and sightings occasionally surface. Skeptics argue the submerged shape is mere coincidence, a natural formation teased into myth by the hopeful eyes of fishermen and divers. But water does not form symmetry. It does not carve precise pores, it does not align foundations, and it does not echo the geometric sophistication of the Great Sphinx just a few miles away. The deeper the examination, the more urgent the question becomes. If water has erased this monument from view, what else has it claimed? And more hauntingly, how much history remains hidden beneath the Nile's restless flow? Why has the underwater Sphinx never been fully excavated? The answer lies partly in institutional caution, partly in the nature of the Nile itself. Egypt's archaeological authorities guard their heritage with rigid protocols. Any dig requires permits, funding, international oversight, and above all, a mountain of undeniable evidence. To rewrite history, to challenge the foundational narrative of Egypt, is an undertaking the state approaches with extreme care. Excavation near Abu Rosh is further complicated by geography. The site floods seasonally, the soil is saturated, and centuries of sediment exert pressure on what may lie beneath. Draining the site, protecting ecosystems, and stabilizing structures would require years, possibly decades, of planning and work. Political considerations add further complexity. The discovery of a pre-dynastic monument with sphinx-like characteristics could disrupt the accepted timeline of Egyptian civilization, undermining centuries of historiography and affecting national pride. The Ministry of Antiquities prefers discoveries that reinforce Egypt's grandeur, monuments that celebrate continuity rather than challenge chronology. Some whisper that preliminary surveys may have been conducted quietly, behind closed doors, but nothing has emerged publicly, leaving independent researchers and enthusiasts to speculate. And so the monument sleeps, buried beneath layers of mud, sediment, and skepticism. It is an irony of immense scale. In a country that treasures antiquity, one of its greatest mysteries may lie hidden, overlooked, untouched, even while billions of tourists flock to the familiar pyramids. Yet even in its obscurity, the Sphinx, real or imagined, exerts power. To the ancient Egyptians, the Sphinx was more than stone. It was a guardian, a god, a fusion of strength and wisdom. The Great Sphinx at Giza, standing 66 feet tall, has watched over the plateau for over 4,000 years, guarding tombs, marking horizons, and holding silent vigil over history. Its exact origins remain debated, its face eroded by centuries of wind and sand, yet imbued with symbolic authority. Now imagine a second Sphinx, hidden, submerged, possibly older than the first, lying just miles away beneath the Nile's current. Such a discovery would challenge the foundations of Egyptology. No known text or papyrus speaks of twin sphinxes at Giza, though symmetry is a recurring motif in Egyptian design. Twin statues, twin obelisks, twin lion avenues. Could this underwater figure be a prototype, a pre-dynastic model that inspired the later Sphinx? If so, it suggests a civilization whose myths, knowledge, and artistry predated writing, architecture, and dynastic rule. The purpose of this monument could be ritualistic, astronomical, or commemorative, marking events lost to memory, floods now erased by sediment. The lion itself was a symbol of cosmic significance. Lions represented the horizon, the gate of dawn and dusk, the eternal rebirth of the sun. A sphinx facing east immortalized that daily miracle, freezing the sacred act in stone. If this submerged sphinx predated the pyramids, it may have observed cycles of the Nile long before dynasties rose, a sentinel of lost worlds, quietly witnessing humanity's earliest attempts to measure time, understand the cosmos, and connect with the divine. Its silence is deliberate, almost sacred. The debate around the underwater sphinx has deepened over decades. On one side stands traditional Egyptology, cautious, structured, reliant on evidence, peer review, stratigraphy, and inscriptions. Their approach prioritizes certainty over speculation. A mistaken identification could erode public trust and mislead scholarship. On the other side exists a growing community of independent researchers, engineers, geologists, and fringe historians who see patterns, alignments, and anomalies that demand attention. Satellite imagery reveals symmetry, light scans hint at rectangular foundations, and erosion patterns seem sculpted by design rather than chance. Some suggest political motives explain the silence. Tourism revenues flow through well-known monuments. The public might react unpredictably to a discovery that disrupts established narratives. But regardless of motive, the underwater sphinx has captured imagination worldwide. Books, documentaries, podcasts, and conferences now explore its mystery, elevating it from local folklore to global curiosity. Even without excavation, its emotional weight is undeniable. It evokes questions about the fragility of civilization, the impermanence of human achievement, and the selective nature of historical memory. The past is not static. Cities fall, languages die, cultures vanish, and rivers shift. Stone can endure, but it is not invincible. A monument buried beneath water and silt is both a cautionary tale and a testament to human ambition. If the underwater sphinx exists, it speaks to a pre-dynastic culture intimately connected with its environment. These people may have observed the stars with precision, mapped the Nile's rhythms, and inscribed meaning into stone long before papyrus and hieroglyphs became tools of memory. The Sphinx could mark floods, celestial events, or spiritual practices, knowledge now lost to history. In this sense, the monument is more than a relic. It is a bridge to a consciousness older than written records, a fragment of human thought preserved in stone and water. The Holocene layers surrounding the site support this theory. Sediment dating shows repeated flooding, heavy rainfall, and dynamic river courses. Geological surveys note deep, rounded grooves in the limestone that resemble rainfall erosion, not wind. The patterns parallel similar weathering observed in the Great Sphinx enclosure, suggesting a climate vastly different from today's arid desert. If ancient rainfall carved the original Sphinx, it is plausible that a sibling monument might have been submerged as waters shifted and sediment accumulated. Yet, even in the absence of confirmation, the underwater Sphinx has value. It challenges assumptions, compels curiosity, and forces a reevaluation of how humans perceive history. It confronts us with uncomfortable questions. How much do we assume we know? How much lies beneath the surface, hidden by sediment, bureaucracy, or oversight? What else remains buried, waiting for rediscovery? The Sphinx has always been a mirror, reflecting human ambition and our fascination with permanence. The submerged figure does the same, but in reverse. It reflects our ignorance, the limits of certainty, and the necessity of imagination. It is a monument not only to a lost culture, but to the human drive to explore, to question, and to seek meaning where none seems apparent. Its silence is its power. It does not need validation to assert influence. It exists as possibility, a shadow of potential knowledge, a testament to the endurance of mystery. Across centuries, Egypt has been a land of revelation and concealment. The pyramids, temples, tombs, and cities preserve stories written in stone. But the river still flows, mud still accumulates, and time still buries and erodes. The underwater Sphinx, whether a natural formation or an extraordinary relic, embodies this process. It reminds us that history is not fully written, that understanding is provisional, and that the earth holds secrets no algorithm or textbook can fully explain. Perhaps one day, water will recede. Perhaps radar and satellite technology will reveal the full form of the monument, face and body exposed to sunlight. Perhaps excavation, political will, and scientific curiosity will converge to bring the Sphinx into human knowledge. Or perhaps it will remain submerged, a whisper in the mud, a story passed from generation to generation, never fully verified, never fully disproven. Its power lies not in certainty, but in possibility. It reminds us that even in a land as studied and cataloged as Egypt, the past is alive, dynamic, and hidden just beneath the surface. It teaches patience, humility, and respect for what we do not yet know. In the murky water, in the sediment, in the quiet, the Sphinx endures, watching, waiting, provoking, inspiring. And in its endurance, it speaks a deeper truth. The past is not a set of static monuments to be cataloged and explained. It is living, layered, and often submerged. The underwater Sphinx challenges us to look, to wonder, to imagine. It reminds us that history is as much about questions as answers, as much about curiosity as certainty, as much about the mysteries we carry with us as the facts we claim to know. Stone, water, sediment, time. These are the mediums of memory. And somewhere beneath the mud of the Nile, a lion waits, silently, timelessly, reminding us that the past is vast, enigmatic, and never fully known. It breathes beneath the silt. It waits beneath the currents. And as long as it remains, whether carved by human hands or shaped by nature's artistry, it holds its greatest gift, the power to make us wonder. Breathes and waits.